What time is it? It's time to answer some viewer comments and questions. All right, we're going to start up here with Chai Blaster. I suppose it's a good sign that listening to all recent videos, I'm just like casually, well, of course, LMAO. Always extremely pleasurable and look forward to them. Big thanks, OMFG. You're welcome, Chai Blaster. The video that Chai Blaster was talking about is... What video is that? Strangely, the name of the video is not displayed. Oh, The Perfect Marriage, it's called. All right. This one's from 777 Morgana. Let go of something earlier with TRE. Never screamed myself hoarse before. Angelo. Trying not to info dump about tarot, but fuck it. The World card is usually depicted as a dancer, and the two spirals in their hands represent the integration and disintegration. Card represents liberation, cosmic consciousness, and final stage of spiritual unfoldment. Just FYI. Quite often I see beautiful symbolic parallels in your videos with Western mystery tradition. Well, of course, right? The mysterious, the unfiltered truth, the unfiltered reality is true regardless of traditions. In fact, traditions are kind of like overlays that say, here's my way of talking about, hopefully if it's a tradition that actually is interested in truth, here's my way of talking about truth. Here's my way of talking about mysticism and so forth. Or here's my method. And probably all of them have some merit, yes, certainly at their core. So it doesn't surprise me at all. And I do know a little bit about tarot, and I really love the symbolism and the archetypal nature of it. And what I find is the more awake you are, the more you see truth everywhere. Everywhere. It's fast. This is what's fascinating to me. I see it everywhere. I hear it in songs. I see it in words written for all different types of purposes, even advertisements. See it in... At some point, it's in the senses, right? So it's like in the visual experience, it's in the sound experience, it's in the sensory experience, but it's also it's coming through the filters of human mind through everything humans do, all of the art, all of the communication, even diluted or like sort of delusional communication that I hear sometimes. Underneath, you can sense the truth that's there. It's kind of like peeking through in a way, but specific to that card, that's really cool. That's really fascinating. Beautiful. Did not know that. This is from Pamela. Not a criticism, but Elaine's share. This is from a video called Deep Shadow Process in Real Time. It says, Elaine's share should have come with a bit of a trigger warning. Now I'm realizing I'm, sooner or later, going to have to, quote unquote, abandon, more like release, my inner child and my own kids' younger selves as holograms that don't exist here and now at all in order to be fully present and fully unmoored. Don't know why that didn't quite occur to me until now. I think it did, but it just didn't hit quite the same. This is totally true. This is true. I wouldn't say this is something you should worry about in like earlier realization because it would only be conceptual, but at some point you will see that every image of yourself, your family, your child, anyone you love, all of it, the images are not what's there. It's not what's quote unquote out there. They're representations. They are perhaps useful placeholders, but they're not actually your child. That's the thing. They're not actually that energetic event that we would call the child. And there's something very paradoxical and interesting here. One of the comments to this question, which I don't usually read the reactions to the questions, but I thought the response was interesting. It said, "Girl, that sounds like nightmare fuel. Are you sure?" And I want to say that there's something so paradoxical about this because if you see it clearly, you see that there's nothing nightmarish about this. You're letting go of an illusion. You're letting go of actually what was getting you in the way of your own relationship with them to some degree and your own relationship with yourself to some degree. using the term here, relationship, in a very relative way. In the absolute sense, of course, there's no relationship. There's no, right? But the relative and absolute are not two, and there's no need to negate either one. But it's not tragic at all, really, when you see what's actually happening. What feels tragic or what feels heavy or what feels uncomfortable is the letting go part. We're letting go of an illusion that we are insisting is true. Who's that about? It's about me. It's about me. It's about my self-centered insistence that everything out there is the way I see it, including those that are the closest to me. Yeah. This is the root of all distortion that comes into relationships, in my opinion, in my view, in my experience. When this drops, you can have true relationship because you don't need anything from anyone anymore. So then you can really see them and you can really love them unconditionally. That's my experience. The eighth fetter in Buddhism, in the Pali Canon, describes the self-sense. Depending on your interpretation, but I would say it's definitely the subtle self-sense. The last remnant of self is represented by the eighth fetter. And it's called conceit. And it's exactly what it is. It's conceit. It's like, sure, you can see through and go, oh, there's no separate self. Oh, sure, I'm awareness, or there's just awareness, there's just consciousness. You can start to deconstruct the self. But the self structure, the identity structure is still operating. And that feels like and looks like conceit if you're just really honest with yourself. You don't even have to be mystical about this. Just be really dead honest and look at what your motivations actually are and be really honest about them. Right? Do you see your child, or do you see what you want to see in part? Do you insist that your image of your child is who they actually are? What happens when you drop that? You will see what's there, and it will be deeply mysterious. And you will feel love like you've never felt before. You may feel a lot of love for your children, and sure you do, like anybody does. But you'll feel a degree of unconditional love that was literally not possible as long as that image is there, as long as the conceit of my worldview is the worldview that exists in reality, and it's the right one somehow. We know that's not true, but we still insist to these very basic components. So this is something everyone confronts. Parents will always face this at some point. And yeah, is it scary? Sure, it can be. Is it tragic? Sure, it can be. Is it feel like a lot to let go of? Sure, it can be. But I promise you, like every stage of this, on the other side of it, you're going to see it so clearly. Of course, I want to see without filters. I want to see my child without a filter. Yeah. Jeff Foster, in his book, The Deepest Acceptance, has the most beautiful description I've ever read about this happening in reference to his father. It's gorgeous. I highly recommend reading this book if you haven't read it, and specifically this portion. It's incredible to see someone suddenly without filters, to experience someone that you think you know, and you're sure you know, and sure you know things about them and whatever, and love and all of it, but to see them and experience them fully and directly without filters is such in a sense, it's miraculous. But he describes it in such beautiful detail. So I highly recommend that if you haven't read it. Pamela, check it out. Okay. All right. This one's from Ian Graham. Hey, Angelo, I wanted to say how relevant I found this video to awakening. This video is called A New Approach to Procrastination. I was going to get to this comment, but I was kind of like putting it off. Sorry, every stupid comment I make about this video is a dad joke. So the comment goes on, simply because when my initial awakening occurred, which was sudden and rather violent, I had no idea what happened to me. However, what I noticed most was procrastination completely ceased for the honeymoon period. I became extremely spontaneous, like I had no off switch. I did a video recently called what awakening was like for me, and this is one of the things I talked about. It was like the spontaneity was so beautiful. So it was so freaking refreshing after having felt like I was hesitating all the time or driving with the brakes on through my whole life, and it was just gone. So I can relate to this. As the shadow began showing up, I started procrastinating again. Now, years later, as the fetters fall away, procrastination becomes less and less. So in a way, this has been a gauge for progress for me through the process. You're describing this very beautifully, and this is rather typical, right? More than the atypical situations where people have a really deep awakening and then maybe non-dual and then like it doesn't come back. Usually it's like deep awakening, the honeymoon period, shadow, and then you start to finally come back and live the spontaneity you realize with the first shift and the total presence you realize you can actually live this out now, which is beautiful. And it says, very recently I realized what you state here, which is simply that it has always boiled down to avoiding something, some feeling in the immediate. Now it all moves rather poetically, like a leaf blowing in the wind. Yeah, exactly. It's exactly. If you don't feel spontaneous, if you feel fixated, if you feel contracted, if you feel like there's an intense center, if any of that, that's not bad. It's just saying there's something here you're not wanting to feel. There's something here, or you're insisting that things aren't the way they are somehow, in some way or another. You don't want to fully admit to yourself what you see and what you know, that this is the way it is. And it's no particular way, but that you're not in control of anything. And there's no you to be in control, and it's just all happening. But it turns out that's a really good way to live when you don't fight it. Anyway, sending lots of love. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. You're welcome. Thank you for your comment. This one comes from Guy, Colorado. This made me want to practice there. He's referring to the interview with 2 Zen teachers that I did, I don't know, a while back, a year and a half, 2 years ago. I don't even know when it was. Really good, though. Peggy and Karen, both of which I knew when I was a young pup doing Zen myself, going to sessions and so forth back in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. This is from Swarananda. It says, I like your comments too. Is resting in awareness bypassing. I must have said that in there, yeah. I like the comments of that person. Silent unity. Angelo, how does the concept of life purpose typically unfold for people going through this process? Self-help often stresses the importance of finding your life purpose. Should people who are oriented toward awakening be spending any effort trying to develop their life purpose, or is this merely yet another concept that will drop away along with the process? It is not immediately obvious to me whether life purpose actually worth finding it, or I wouldn't mix that. I'm going to give a simple answer to this. I could say a lot more about it, but my simple answer, at least in this moment, is don't mix the two up. Awakening isn't to find your life purpose. That's not what awakening is about. Not at all. That's just not what it's about. Awakening is to wake up to truth. And you may find that when that happens, the idea of purpose is absurd, falls away. You may not. You'll find what you find. But I wouldn't mix that up with like trying to find your life purpose, find your way in life. If you feel like you don't, I don't know if I'd put it in terms of a purpose, like some mental thing, but I just mean livelihood. What do you want to do with your life? How do you want to spend your time? You're going to have time away from and outside of spirituality no matter what anyway. You know, what kind of vocation are you interested in? What kind of relationships do you want? Like if parts of those areas of your life are undeveloped, work on them. You can work on those along with this whole crazy awakening process. But if you totally ignore those areas, you'll have to go back anyway and do something. You'll have to go figure something out. You're going to have to figure out what the blocks were. You're going to have to reprocess why things aren't happening the way you wanted them to happen. What kind of traumas are there? You're going to reprocess that stuff, and that's, of course, a form of shadow work. So in my opinion, they're kind of parallel things. Like I don't generally endorse just stopping your life to wake up, to like give yourself fully to the awakening process. Usually doesn't mean dropping out of school, ending all relationships and becoming monastic or something. But I will never say never, because for some people it does. And that's fine too, to live the monastic life, whether it's a traditional monastic life or a contemporary monastic life somehow built into society, which I have known some people who have done as well. All those are fine to me. I have no problem with any of it. But if you feel a pull, there's some party that's like, I got to figure out the relationship thing. Go do it. You can do it simultaneously. But I wouldn't mix the two up. Nothing about awakening is about finding a purpose, in my opinion. It's about living truth, not finding a mental construct that you can call the purpose. Yeah? Okay. Next one is Emmanuel Henniker. And this is called Exploding into Existence, the video title. It says, can you clarify about the phenomenon of bad habits playing out without resistance in this state? I can't stop doing them, even though I see what it does to me and feels very painful. And the less resistance I have, the more they play out. Let's see, where am I at? However, the other side of things, the rest of my life blooms. There is so much authenticity. It's awesome. So this kind of confuses me. I'm just going to ask you a few questions. First of all, I'm assuming these bad habits aren't something where you're harming another person or violence or something like that. So that's not what I would be talking about with this answer. But short of that, a few things I'll throw out just to ask yourself and inquire. First of all, part of what keeps these things going is probably the fact that you think they're bad, right? They may be harmful in the relative to you in some way. They may be not the most healthy thing you could be doing with your time or whatever in the relative. But I'm pretty sure of this based on my experience with habits and with other people's working through their habits, that what I sense and what it turns out to be the truth once we get to the bottom of a lot of this stuff is that a lot of what fuels the habit is the control. It's the insistence that it's not there. Right? And if that gets to an extreme, you have addiction. Addiction is all about control and loss of control. It's like an insistence of being in control. So we're trying to control our experience, control our emotions, control our feelings through the use of, let's say, a substance. And it works kind of until it doesn't, right? And then you get more of it and you just keep going back and forth, back and forth. But the feeling of being out of control starts to build and build once an addictive habit is taken over. Now you feel out of control, right? So the whole thing about control and being out of control, which are ultimately intertwined illusions, that's at the heart of a lot of this stuff. So just know that. And insisting that something is bad and shouldn't be there is kind of part of it, right? So I'm not necessarily saying I'm not telling you to embrace something that's harmful to yourself, but I'm suggesting that you really inquire into why you think it's so bad. And is it that you think it's bad, or is it that you want to be in control of it? Look into that, feel into those things. And that's a couple things I want to say. The other thing I want to say is a lot of times these types of things don't really sort themselves out until deep, deep realization. They can be there a while. So in some sense, you got to learn to live with them. But it's like anything. If you want to learn to live without something, you got to learn to live with it. You want to learn to live without psychological fear, you got to learn to live with it, right? So like everything, this is about resistance at some level. Doing shadow work, even though you may not feel like you're doing it in direct relation to what these issues are, will help. Get underneath the shadow stuff, and that tends to straighten a lot of things out. But ultimately, regardless of shadow work or any of it, this comes down to acceptance and resistance. Yeah, how much resistance are you adding to this? Good question, thank you. Very common and very relevant, of course. This one comes from, oh, no, not that one. Here we go. Hearts Ablaze, yo. Hearts Ablaze, yo. Hey, Angelo. Thought I'd say something about my own experience of feeling resistance. I sat for many hours, for many months, with awareness in the body, and the chest and solar plexus felt like a bubble of discomfort. Okay, I don't know where exactly this question's going, but I already have a sense of what I want to say to it. We'll see what they say, though. And I sat for the emotion of resistance, looking. And until one day I realized, okay, I won't say it, I'll just read it, that my looking was actually a kind of doing. It had a kind of willfulness about it. This has relation to what I just answered in the other question, but this is exactly what I was going to say. If you're sitting with something for days and days and months and questioning and querying and all the things I tell you to do, like inquiry and all that, it's really important to be vulnerable enough to actually ask yourself, like, am I creating this by trying to get rid of it? Am I resisting this and thus fueling it, right? Am I doing something to it instead of just really, really letting it be there? If you really let it be there, it won't feel like this. Like you won't feel like you're doing something for months to it. If you really just let it be what it is, then it kind of overtakes you. And that's what you're trying to avoid if you're standing in awareness, standing in the witness state and so forth, yeah? So anyway, you've figured that out, and that's great. It says that was at least part of the resistance pattern. I mention it because I always thought resistance was trying to take my hand out of the fire. But in my case, it was trying to stick my hand deeper into the fire to find an off switch. That's a good way of saying it. Resistance is control. So sometimes it's pushing, sometimes it's pulling. In this case, it was kind of a pushing or something. But you have to pull to push, right? You have to stand back in awareness, so to speak. There is no such thing, but that's what it feels like. You have to stand back as the watcher or the witness state to even have that experience of trying to go back down into something. Do you see what I'm saying? My Zen teacher explained this so clearly. He said for years he would look at a flower, and because he knew non-duality, he knew non-dual presence, he'd experienced it, but it wasn't there most of the time. So he would look at a flower and try to merge with it. And he said, this was really painful. It was really, really painful to do this. And I remember when he was telling this, giving us this talk, the audience, like some giggles in the audience, and he looked around, he said, this wasn't funny. He said, it might sound funny now, but it wasn't funny. It was miserable. So it was brutal, you know? He was really trying to merge with this flower and he couldn't fucking do it. And he said at some point he just exhausted himself of doing it. And he just gave up. And then the flower overtook him. Yeah? That's how this is. Sometimes you really do have to beat your head against a brick wall because it feels good when you stop. So yeah, you may feel like, oh man, I'm doing everything. I'm feeling this. Man, I've heard this from so many people too. God, for years, Angela, I thought I was feeling it. I was burning. I was on fire, like the pain, the emotional pain. Like I felt like I was just staying with it. I was riding it out until I finally realized, no, I was avoiding it the whole time by looking at it. You can almost avoid it by keeping a distance from it and telling yourself you're trying to get closer to it. Does that make sense? That's all this is. That's what resistance is, right? Resistance can't exist without a dualistic construct. So you need to feel like you're apart from something and then trying to get closer to it or merge with it, right? Trying to merge with something, you're reinforcing the underlying assumption that it's apart from you, that's separate. How can reality merge with reality? It's just reality. You know what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to pick on you or drive this home too deeply, but I just want to make it obvious in a few different ways of speaking to anyone else who's listening, because this is painful stuff. Like, and you did the right thing. You did what you could. You sat with it. You sat with it until you finally saw, for whatever reason or however it happened, you saw what you're actually doing is not fully sitting with it. You were making it an object with your subject. You were resisting it without realizing it. You were trying to do something with it or to it, or by being aware of it or getting closer to it or seeing it or solving it or fixing it. Yeah. It ends up being something more like either exhausting yourself at worst, or at best, finding a way to relax and just letting it overtake you. Just letting it be what it is, and then you'll see that it was never apart from you at all, that is a cosmic joke, but not fun when you're going through it. Okay. It says, but in my case, it was trying to stick my hand deeper into the fire to find an off switch. That's really a good way of saying it. The moment that was fully realized, which seemed to deepen over time, suddenly there was access to the movement of emotion. That's beautiful. And just FYI, we can sometimes do this in about 30 minutes if we do it in a circling group. Not always, but a lot of times we'll have breakthroughs that are very quick, that are like this, that don't require. There's something about relational work, right? Because if you're doing it yourself, you can see everything except your own shadow. You see everything except what's behind your head. Yeah, that's how this works. So that's why there's coping mechanisms that hide shadow. And so you can do your own shadow work. You can inquire. You can have a heart oriented to truth and work at it and grind away at it and query. You can do all that, and it does pay off. But relational work can be really powerful, and it can show you what you hadn't seen, and it can, you know what I mean? Because I have seen people that it's almost exhausting to watch, and I feel for them because they dance around the fire, but they don't really go directly in for help when they could with someone they know, even like a non-dual facilitator, someone who has that clarity, or go to a retreat or go to a circling event or something. And man, I'm like, you know, yeah, you got to go through what you got to go through. It's your karma. You got to sometimes burn up that karma, but damn, just go put yourself in a circle, put yourself in a deep shadow process. You'll see things shift so quickly. You can, you know, when you're ready. But again, all this stuff comes down to when you're ready. There's a karmic thread there. Yeah. You won't read The Power of Now until you're ready. You won't watch a video of mine until you're ready. You won't sign up for a retreat until you're ready. Many people won't even learn to meditate until they're ready. They don't want to, because they know, like, once I start going down that rabbit hole, I'm going to go straight down it. I've met people who've said this to me. They're waiting, so some of this is about timing, and that's fine too. But but there are good resources now for relational work in this deep stuff that's sticky and tricky and slippery and all of it. So thank you for your comment. I went to work on that one, but I appreciate you. Okay. This is from Tim. It says, so clear. Always so clear. This is from How to Deconstruct Suffering in 3 Steps. Thanks, Tim. This one's from Daniel the One. I forgot to thank you when we last talked, so I want to thank you for bringing it back again and again in this series of videos from this and that angle. I forgot about that. Thanks. I forgot about that too. Thanks for reminding me and pointing to what to do. When I found your channel, I didn't know about shadow work. Step by step, I got glimpses of what it is. Now, more often than not, I see some strong emotions while arising. I feel into them and smile. There's no need for me to find why, to bring up a narrative, be the victim, or find the villain. Beautiful. It is what it is, and it's here to be felt. What I got accustomed to is not that bad after all. That's the key, right? That's when you're really getting into that deep shadow stuff and you're getting into a kind of place of maturity, is when you realize you are really feeling it now. And it went from extremely intense, like I can't stand this is going to kill me, to it's not that bad. Then it starts to really transmute. So it says thanks. And you are very welcome, Daniel. That's from a video called Shadow Work and Light Work that I did. Risha, what's not here is the loudest thing in the room. I can't understand this fully yet, but somehow these words resonate here. I feel to sit with it. Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah. What's not here is the loudest thing in the room. This is from my video called Liberation and the Final Fetters Part 2. That's one of the courses for the Patron Circle members. Yeah. Yeah. What's not here? What's not here? What's not here is so free, because it doesn't have to be anything. It doesn't have to be here. It doesn't have to be this way or that way. It doesn't have to be light or dark. It doesn't have to be categorized. It doesn't have to be located. It can't be lost. It can't be gained. It doesn't need to be gained. All right? It's not here, so it's not bound by space. It's not here or there. It's also not here. Free of all categories, free of all elaborations. It's so beautiful. Yeah. Yep. This one's from News. Yeah. Thank you. You're welcome. That's in All Beliefs Are False. ? Joshua. You, the thinker, listener, observer, just feels like a hole. It's like there's nothing to point to or see there. It's like how I imagine the visual field behind my head. If I turn around, I see what's behind me, but the blind spot is still behind me. There's nothing there, but there's not a sense of something missing there. It doesn't feel like there's a there for anything to be or not be. Very dreamlike in the sense of opening a door and then there's nothing behind it. Kind of at an impasse, honestly. You may as well be asking me to feel my tail. Feeling for it seems more like imagining sensation than actually feeling something that's there. Okay, this is from my video called How Thought Loses Potency When You See What It Is That's Doing the Thinking. Yeah, I think for you, I would recommend the kind of non-duality playlist. Yeah. Like non-dual insight will clarify all of this. Because this feels like kind of like that one mind stage. And there's a lot of clarity there, but there's something not quite landing about non-duality. With non-dual clarity, yeah, these kinds of questions don't really arise so much. There is no behind anymore. Yeah. I won't say there's never any shadow material that can come up. There definitely is, but it's all psychological in nature. The sense of there being anything behind or in front or hidden kind of doesn't make sense anymore. So nothing's hidden because there's nothing obscuring. There's no obscurations anymore. Not in the physical experience. Good question. Okay. This says, this is from HP is here. Wow, so much of what you described was my story. After a period of immense loss and upheaval, I started casually practicing mindfulness when all other self-help failed. When First Awakening happened, I had no context for what was happening, and neither did my mindfulness coach. It was incredibly destabilizing, but ultimately the greatest blessing. In hindsight, prior to First Awakening, I had intuitively been looking for the truth of who I was, so I could rebuild my life. But at the time, it was brutally painful, and there was nothing spiritual about it. Yeah, this was years before even hearing the term self-inquiry. The first year was pretty hellish, but wouldn't trade anything for the world. That's beautiful. I may have read that comment before, but anyway, that's from the video, What the Wellness Industry is Not Telling You. I don't think I read that comment aloud, but I think I read it to myself. Yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of people who have that story, right? Where you got into meditation through work or through who knows how, or mindfulness practice, or even maybe through some therapy or maybe a psychedelic journey, and all of a sudden the bottom dropped out in a way that your guides or your coaches or your therapist didn't know how to guide you. They could tell it was beyond their own experience. And that's integrity that they tell you that. And I've heard that before. To me, it takes great integrity to say, I don't know. I don't know what just happened to you. I don't know where you went. I can't guide you. But luckily, there's guidance, here. So not just here. There are other people who can guide you with this stuff. But yeah, it can be confusing when you went to the wellness, when you went to the well of wellness to feel a little better, and all of a sudden your experience of reality just turned inside out, and your identity, blew up like a giant infinite balloon or something, and then popped. Right? It's pretty strange. This one's from Tatiana. Hello, everyone. I have done this before, watched videos, loved them, but didn't click like button. I think it's important to remember to do this. It's good for these kinds of messages to be more visible. Thank you. It is. I don't ever say it. I don't do the YouTube thing and say click the like button, but it does help. Of course it does. The more people like things, the more people subscribe, the more people watch the whole video and not watch part of the video. Those things all help the algorithm, and we're all competing with AI now, so it is what it is, but I appreciate the clicks and the likes and all of it. All right. Okay. This one is from Has It Ever Not Been Now? You've articulated how I feel all the time. I can't even come up with the term for it. This is from my video called What Awakening Was Like for Me. Angst partially covers it. Really, I just feel like shit all the time. Good times, bad times, doesn't matter. After discovering you and hearing about awakening a little over 1 year ago, I've been doing everything I can to wake up. Retreats, teachers, TRE, along with near constant inquiry and shadow work. Still, there's this pervasive, shitty feeling, and like I'll never be able to wake up, or it's just not available and can't happen for me. Yet I try to remain as optimistic as I can and equanimous with whatever's here in the moment. I refuse to quit, but I'd do anything for liberation right now. I'm so tired. I totally understand. 1 year, huh? One pointed approach might work for you because you have a lot of energy in your drive to awaken, which is great. And that same energy, it's mental energy until you shift. Until there's a shift, a lot of that's mental energy. And the drive is great, but the mental energy, when it comes back around and kicks you, is not great. Makes you feel doubt, frustration, tells you you're not awake constantly, reminds you you're not awake as much as you're trying to push to be awake, right? This is the push and pull of the mind. It's frustrating as shit. I get it. So the one-pointed approach takes your attention and narrows it so precisely that your mind, you don't have time to think this stuff. You literally don't have time because you have to stay on that rail that goes on to infinity. Moo, just moo, just moo. No thought, just moo. You have to stay on that rail. And if you stay there long enough, something miraculous will happen. Something fascinating will happen. Something natural will happen. That's the one-pointed approach. And it really works. It works for people who have this kind of intensity. If you have this kind of intensity. So I would actually say if you have that intensity, use it, ramp it up, put it all into one point. Find out what is mu. Yeah. Or that's one approach or one thing you can do. The other thing is there's a lot of frustration here, a lot of emotional content. You said you've tried a lot of things. This is what I would consider as try the deep shadow process, circling type stuff. Really potent, really directed, really nuanced in a sense, shadow work. InsideCircle.org, check their stuff out, or anywhere I offer it. I'm trying to put it more in my retreats and stuff. But yeah, you have a lot of energy there. And like I said, that one-pointed approach is pretty good. Focus, that mind, that intensity of mind until the mind gets calm. Yeah. And every single thought that comes up when that's happening, when you're on that rail, every single thought that comes up is not a failure. It's a reminder to reorient your attention back to the rail. That's it. Everything will come to your aid, including every single thought. That's the one-pointed approach. Good luck. Stick with it. It'll shift. All right. Okay, one more. This is from Ashley. Hey, Ashley. Ashley Stewart. The video is called What Awakening Was Like for Me. It says, listening to this was so validating. It's hard to explain this now for me personally and what was actually shifted. I related to everything you said about life before this shift too. For me, it's the fact that my mind doesn't go down a thought rabbit hole now. There are times I notice it trying to go back to that coping mechanism, but it fails. If it's something that makes me feel angry or sad, I feel that right then, and then it's just gone. That moment still sucks, but it's acknowledging the existence of how it makes me feel that's liberating for me personally. So this is someone who's done shadow work, right? Had the awakening and also done shadow work because she sees it clearly. She's not fighting with the truth of experience. Yeah, it feels like crap. Like I have an intense experience, an intense emotion. There's some resistance. And guess what? Here it is. I'm going to feel it. Let it be there. Let it overtake me. And then it's gone. And it comes and then it's gone. But that's a mature view that you're not in control of experience. You're not in control of the flow of phenomena, right? You're not in control of it. It's coming, it's going. Everything's coming, everything's going. And it's okay. Everything's transient. It takes some maturity to see that and to really start to live that. But then that starts to really coalesce into a very nice place once you've gotten to that level of vulnerability and surrender and openness. It says that moment still sucks, but it's acknowledging its existence, how it makes me feel. That's liberating for me personally. I hope I've kind of explained it. Maybe, maybe not. I really don't know. Of course you did. You're very articulate, Ashley. Thank you as always. Appreciate you. All right. Okay, one more question. This is from Sharon Hepburn. Been watching all of these 6 Fetter videos. They're great. As the filter slips away, other and subjective dissolves. Okay, very strange experience. Yes. It feels very now or immediate. Yes. But I wouldn't describe the experience as oneness. No, I wouldn't either. Is this just a difference of language? I wouldn't call it oneness. I may have used that term here or there, but I generally don't because, yeah, it doesn't feel like oneness. I wouldn't call it that. Oneness feels conceptual to me, like you're trying to take all the ideas you have about everything and all the variation of ideas in the world and different people and objects and subjects, and you're trying to like condense them down into one thing. Like that's how oneness sounds to me. But the experience of no subject object doesn't feel like oneness. It does feel like intimacy. It feels natural. It feels like a correction for sure of an illusion. I don't really know. It feels like flow. It feels like now. It feels centerless. Can feel centerless. Yeah. Let's see what it says. It says, or is there still a subtle filter of subject in place? There may not be at all. Move on to 7 and see how things go. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Thank you all for your questions. I do read all your questions and comments, almost all, if not all. But I can't respond to all of them, of course. if you're a channel member level or above, I will respond to those more frequently. And a few announcements if anyone's interested. We have retreats coming up. We have one at Art of Living in December. It is the silent retreat. You'll see me there, and you'll also have a breakout group. It will be once a week. You'll have one time during the week, you'll have the breakout group with a non-dual facilitator, but you'll have guided meditations, talks, Q&As every day, lots of silent sitting in a beautiful place. And then in the spring, we have the multimodality conference where you can do a full day of inside circle. And you can do different large group activities every single day. And there are breakout rooms every single day with different non-dual facilitators for Q&A. And then I still do talks, guided meditations, and those sorts of things. So it's a hoot, but it's not a silent retreat. So it's a different experience, but good shadow work stuff there and a lot of multimodality type stuff. So cool. Thank you all, and we will see you soon.